Good Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here on this Sunday. Sunday, the 17th of January, 2021. Now, listen, I've never seen a situation like this before in my life in America. A division between the political uh, people on the left and people on the right. You got nearly 50%. It's nearly divided 50% on this. And, out of that, uh, let's just say 47% either way, and you got about 6% of the people who are kind of undecided, and they could flip flop either way, and then amongst those 47% on both sides, they're creating arguments for their side. Both sides have a diametrically polarized view about what the other side believes to be true, and both sides think that they're right, and both sides have points that they want to make. But what it's created is created a division like we've never seen in America before. And, we've had divisions in America before. Going back to the Civil War, you had division in America. But it was different back then. The people who had the opposing view, they lived in the southern states, and the people in the northern states had a different view. This time, it's arranged totally different. It's the people in the cities now have an opposing view from the people who live in the country. It's a totally different situation. And it's kind of all coming to a head this week. It's going to be a very interesting week. If you're sitting back observing this whole thing play out, uh, it's a lot of drama associated with it. Drama like I've never seen before. It's incredible the amount of drama that's going on right now with this whole situation. And how is it going to actually play out over this next couple weeks? We're going to have to wait and see, because I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I know an awful lot. There's an awful lot riding on this. Uh, it's very interesting, to say the least, but there's other things happening in the world right now, structured within the financial system. One of the things is the yield curve. Now, they got the bases covered, the Fed does, on the short end of the yield curve. But when you start moving beyond the long end, the 10-year and the 30-year and so on, it seems like these rates have been creeping up on them. And I don't believe they've been doing yield curve control yet. I think it's coming later this year. And you say, well, why does that matter? Why does yield curve control matter that much? It matters huge to gold and silver. Why do you think we got this boost? You remember, or it wasn't that long ago, you could buy an ounce of gold for $1,050. We're not talking a very long period of time ago. Gold was in the $1,200 range. And now it's up in the 1800s, and it has touched 2000. It's went beyond 2000 just a little bit. But now it's settled back into the 1800s. Silver follows gold. The two move together, by the way. And when gold starts to catch the really big bid, it starts to rise like a wave of gold. The prices start to rise and everything. Silver is going to tend to rise even more than the gold price. When we do get this really big boost that's coming. In fact, it's going to be difficult to obtain the physical metal. And I've heard a lot of complaints on my channel about people out there who are saying, well, when you buy silver, where are you going to sell it? The coin dealers don't really want to buy it. And they're all going to offer you less than spot. And these complaints that I've heard on my channel quite a bit out there. I want to tell you guys, when this massive bull rally comes in the gold and silver, which is coming, it's coming because they're going to have to do yield curve control at a certain point this year. I'm expecting it this year. And not a long ways off. Actually, I'm probably expecting it within the second quarter. I don't even think they're going to get to the third quarter and they're going to have to be in yield curve control. They got to bring that long end of the yield curve back down again. There's no way they can let it rise at this point. And when they start to do that, new programs start to come out. And by the way, that $1.9 trillion stimulus package that Biden has planned, I think that's a good idea. I think it's a very good idea to keep, and social programs and stuff to because there's an awful lot of people out there in America right now who are very much challenged by this virus situation and the job losses that we've experienced. Heck, listen, guys, half of the American workforce is staying at home right now, not working. That means the country's about half shut down completely. Now they're talking about raising the minimum wage. They have to support these people out there. If they don't, you think you've seen civil unrest? You haven't seen nothing. They'll tear the place to the ground. If because you've got a large group of people now within America who are, how would I put it? They've lived their whole life. They've always had a job and food and everything that they need. And all of a sudden you take all that away from them. Unless you offer them support, and meaningful support over an extended period of time to get us through this crisis. And 1.9 trillion, I consider it a move in the right direction toward this. But what's it going to do to the money? And if they don't do it, what's it going to do to the economy? They're caught in the middle right now, where they got between the devil and the deep blue sea, is the old saying. It's like an army that's caught on the edge of a cliff, and they got an advancing army moving toward them, and they got the cliff on the other side of them. And I mean, this is the position that the Fed's in right now. And if they don't support the people, what they're creating is they're creating a have and a have-not society. But if you push this too far, then the have-nots are like a blevy. Now, if you guys don't know what a blevy is, it's a gas explosion. And oftentimes gases are you can't even smell them. You can't see them. They can be on the air. And they're looking for an ignition source. This is what the people are like. The more and more people that start to go without, they start to feel like they got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And anger starts to grow amongst them. Discontentment. And the discontentment comes from the inequality in society, where you've got a very minority or a small few who have everything, and you have a large group who have nothing. They don't even have a meal. And so the best thing that they can do right now is to print like there's no tomorrow, because then they'll extend this and pretend. They'll extend and pretend that it's not really going on, and they might be able to squeeze out a little bit more juice out of this dried out lemon, where we're going, in the direction that we're going in. In other words, they might be able to make it last a little bit longer before everything caves in. Whereas if they don't support the people, if they just let the people, it's going to be like a blevy, a gas explosion where it finds that source of ignition someplace within a large crowd of people. If you look at this large crowd of people, it's like looking out over the ocean from a distance. If you want to get close and examine it closely, you can examine it on a personal level, how it's affecting each and every citizen in the country. But as a larger group, this is like this big cloud of gas that hasn't found an ignition source. Once it finds the ignition source, then the blevy is created. In other words, a giant fireball explodes out of nowhere, comes out of nowhere. But the conditions have to be right. And what we've moved into, it's a situation that's created the right conditions now for this to happen. And, they got these $600 checks not long ago. if you were to take it to a personal level, you'd see some of them are surviving because they've lost their job and they moved into their parents' house. But their parents expect them to buy a few groceries or whatever, you know. Maybe they're living in the basement. Maybe their parents expect them to pay the power bill every month and pay for the phone bill and pay for a few groceries. Well, the $600 will do that. But it's not like they've got a life anymore, you know. Maybe some people have moved into their car. Well, $600 will keep them going for a month or two more. That's the way, because the people themselves are not like these politicians and these bankers and these rich guys out there. There's nothing for them to spend $100,000 a day. But the poorer people can make $600 last them a month or two. If they're frugal, if they're frugal with the money and they go easy with it. So did take the pressure off a little bit, the fact that they sent them all $600 checks. But that's going to run out. And you extend this support further into the future while America can get back on its feet. You know, we've got these COVID vaccines going out there. And this could make things more normal, but we've also got a disease out there that is real, guys. It is real. There's a lot of debate over whether it come from a laboratory, you know, and the WHO is sending people in there to try to investigate into Wuhan. But my way of thinking is I don't think they can find anything because the virus it travels with people. It doesn't stay on buildings or, you know, and what are they going to do? Are they going to examine the buildings and stuff? They're not going to find any virus there anymore. The virus don't live on buildings and stuff. It doesn't even live on surfaces for very long. It's with the people. I think they'd do a better job examining the virus itself, breaking apart its DNA and RNA and all these different types of NAs, breaking them down under a microscope and examining how the virus is actually structured. Maybe they'll find some answers that way rather than travel into Wuhan, because what are they going to see there? I don't see where there's an awful lot to see. Maybe they want a vacation. I don't know. Anyway, paid vacation. And they'll probably get time and time and a half and overtime. Well, I don't think that's really how they get paid, but they're going to make out okay with that one, you know. But it satisfies people. Say, oh, sounds great, you know. There's a big team traveling to Wuhan to find out the origins of the virus. As far as I'm concerned, probably just another boondoggle, you know. And boondoggling us the whole way on everything, you know. We've been boondoggled on everything. Money. We've been boondoggled on viruses. We've been boondoggled on, and they're just constantly finding new ways to trick us, and the media and everything else, you know. And I've never seen anything like this world that we're moving toward. But yeah, we got a virus, and this virus, in my mind, could be a civilization killer if it's not for the vaccines. And we better hope darn well that those vaccines are going to work. Not hope that they're not going to work, because if they don't work, where's this virus going to go? It's so sketchy that if just one person has it, if right now we eliminated everybody that had this virus and only one person in the world had it, well, in 3 months they could infect everybody on Earth again, practically. That's how contagious this thing is. To get rid of something like that is very difficult. So we better hope that the vaccines work, because if they don't work, the virus could become what's called endemic in society, meaning that we don't get rid of it. It just keeps coming and coming. In other words, every 6 months you'd get reinfected with it and get sick all over again. And each time, you don't know which time is going to get you. Do we really want something like that hanging around? Become endemic in the population? Well, then our hope is in the virus, in these multitude that they got. Not just one, but they got a multitude of these new vaccines that they're creating. And that's our hope, to really get rid of this thing. Because that's what we really need to do, is get rid of this thing so that the world can start to get back to normal a little bit. Because we've been through a lot over the past year. And do you really want this to continue into 2021, 2022, 2023? It'll slowly start breaking society apart. What we've already seen, you go to the grocery store and you want a certain item and they're out of it. It never used to be that way. Now it's that way. Well, that would get much worse. A lot of the items that are still there would suddenly be gone if this virus keeps coming. And in the end, we'd have total food shortages where you wouldn't be able to get food at all. You starve? So if the virus doesn't get you, you starve. This is why our hope is in the vaccine, to get rid of this thing. Because I personally believe that if left unchecked, I believe this virus would slowly diminish productivity to where our society would start to break apart and into wars, civil wars, wars within countries, countries warring with one another, and that would just make things worse, and then the virus would just keep going until people broke apart to a point where it would be like every man for himself, and then the virus would lose its train of transmission. It wouldn't be able to transmit between people because people would be more isolated. And what effect would that ultimately have on the world's population? Well, there would probably only be less than 100 million people left if this virus just kept coming and coming and coming. It'd just keep picking us off, and starvation would pick off people, and other diseases would pick off people, and the healthcare system would be diminished to zero, and travel in the end would diminish to zero. Everything would just come to a grinding stop, and we'd be like a lost civilization. That's why I call this virus a civilization destroyer. It doesn't look like much on the surface when you just examine it. As you could argue. One man could argue with another one, oh, it's just the flu. And the other guy could argue, no, it's not. But looking at it just quickly, you'd think, hey, this isn't no real big deal. But it is a big deal. It's the way this virus operates. It's because it's so contagious, one thing. Not like the flu. You see what happened to the flu? We have been practicing social distancing, wearing masks and stuff. What effect did it have on the flu? Destroyed the flu. What about the common head cold? It destroyed the common head cold. There's no flus or common head colds going around this season, and this is flu season. Why? It's because of the measures we're practicing. But what's happening with COVID? It's still spreading. Right? Still spreading everywhere. What does that say about COVID? You got to think about that for a minute. And how do you get rid of something like that? Without shutting the world down so nobody's traveling anymore. Oh, that's a no-brainer. If everybody wasn't traveling anymore, the virus would disappear. But then your world's shut down. And that's what we've done. We've done partial shutdowns of everything, trying to get rid of the virus. It doesn't seem to work. Or at least not very well, The thing that's going to work the best of anything is these vaccines. Once you create a problem, once you create this virus, once this virus is out there in the population, then the only way to solve the problem is with something that can effectively work as a tool to stop it. And there's where we have the vaccine again. It's an effective tool to stop it. But you're going to have, just like anything, you're going to have people out there who have allergic reactions, possibly, or have or have some sort of a, nothing is completely 100% foolproof, and this is the way it goes. But we know what the virus would do. It would just keep picking people off one by one by one. The vaccine, they might get a few problems with it, but you got to weigh that against the, and it sounds like I am 100% pro-vaccine when you're listening to me, and the truth is, I am 100% against this virus. We are in a war against it, and I see the vaccine as our most potential most potentially effective weapon to actually stop this thing, so that we can get some sort of normal back before it completely breaks civilization apart and we get a blevy. Now, I've used the illustration of a blevy. What would happen if we get a blevy, an enormous blevy that the government can't control? Ultimately, it would break the food supply chains. Order would possibly be lost over widespread areas. And, what do you do then? How do you restore it? Did you know the power grid itself, if the entire power grid goes down, there's a very much of a likelihood that they can't get it started again? Ever? Because when they start up part of it, say they start up a coal-fired plant, and they go to hook it into that grid that's completely dead everywhere, the grid acts as a dead short to absorb all that electricity. And one power plant can't run the entire grid, but if all the rest of the grid's down, how do they transmit that power back in to try to revitalize or repower the grid when the rest of it's down? It would absorb all of that electricity like a dead short. So as long as the grid is up and running, it works the same way. It's like a person if they had a massive heart attack. Well, their blood, all their life, their blood's been pumped through their veins by the heart, and it's kept the pressure there their whole life. If they have a massive heart attack and their heart quits, well, the person's going to drop dead, and they're going to turn white and pale, and that's it. Well, that's the way with our power grid, evidently. It's been pumping power our whole lives through the grid, and it's never really went out. The whole grid's never really went down. But if the whole grid does go down, you got a problem, because then the body dies. The body being the entire system that's all enabled by the grid. And yeah, sure, you got people who are off grid. Say, oh, it ain't going to bother me. I got a solar bank and I got an array and everything else. And I'll have power when all you guys don't and everything. And I'll have food when all you guys don't. One of the things those guys haven't thought out is where are the hungry mob going to go once the grid's down? Well, they're going to come to your house. The guy's got the power and guy got the light and got his generator running in the front yard or whatever. They'll hear that 3 miles away. That generator whining away, and they'll say, civilization! Oh, I smell food too. And they put their nose up in the air and they sniff whatever he's cooking. And it'll be somebody's coming to dinner. So it's a total situation where we don't want to go. Even if we're preppers, we shouldn't want to go there, because it's a very dangerous world. If you've watched the Mad Max movies and things like that, you realize that that's a very dangerous world. And do you really want to get into something like that? So the blevy better not find the ignition source, because the fuel's already out there right now. And we see signs of that when we saw what happened, And now we're moving into this week, and there's a high danger that something could happen again. High danger. But the situation is trying to resolve itself one way or the other. I don't know which direction things are going to move in. I have my opinions on that, but, I'm not really going to express them. Listen, thank you guys for listening to me rattle away on the situation. Watch out for this week. This is going to be a very tense week. I know it's going to be a tense week. In every different direction, it's going to be tense. And we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.